Today I want to talk about what happens when you have a significant amount that you need to raise your front and back rise, and what happens when you do that and you don't raise the rise at the side seam, and then also a little bit about having enough depth to your pattern. This is coming from one of the members in my Facebook group asked some questions about her muslin, and I saw a whole bunch of things in there that I thought would make a really cool tutorial, so I'm sharing with you all here. In front of me, I have taken my standard half scale front and back legs and I've sort of shaped them like the pattern that my member is working with. And what I just want to point out to you here, and I'm just going to use my green to show you. So the original crotch on this pattern was much longer, and actually if I line it up like this, all right, you can see if I put this one back underneath it, the crotch, is extending almost the same distance here, but it's scooped down to this tiny little chair. You know how I like to call the back crotch a chair? So see how that's your chair. That's your depth in the back. It's very tiny. And then the rise comes up, a little bit like this, creating much less negative space inside in the back. And the front is exactly the same. So if I get my front out here and compare, you can see that what's happening is basically all of this green here was negative space in my pattern, and I just sort of recreated a very straight, shallow curve in the front. And I'm going to put the actual pattern up in a minute when I show you how she raised the front and back rise. All right, so first I just want to show you here what she decided to try doing first was she took her pattern, slashed across, somewhere like this. Okay, and the first thing she tried was just raising the rise like this. And I'm not exaggerating here. This is about how much she needed to add based on her measurements and what she was working on. You can see that's a significant amount. So first she did it like this, and then one of my moderators in my group suggested that she break the single slash up into multiple slashes, which kind of relaxes what's going on, and it might make it a little bit easier to true up. So if you have a significant amount like this, and you can see now this is pushing out farther, another way to increase the rise would be to do this. I'm just going to show you the same thing but in the back. So instead of making one slash, you could create a few, and what that does is it kind of makes the adjustment just a little bit more gentle, but you still have to true it up. So basically, if you have all these slashes, right, and I slash and open all of these, I'm just going to show you how this is going to work here in a minute. I'm just going to cut them all. Okay, and then you could do something like this where you break up the amount that you need to slash, and it will look something like this, right? And then you can true that up as well. So take a look at this photo, okay, and I'm just going to put it full screen so you can't see me because it's a big picture, but basically this is how she ended up trying to raise the center front and back rise. And you can see she filled in the divot that's caused by all of that pivoting at the side seam. So she smoothed out the shape and she straightened the center back seam and the center front seam. And you can see this is a good way to do it. It's just a huge amount of length to add just at center front and center back. And I don't want to say that someone may never need to just add length like this at center front and center back. But you can see from this side view photo that what's happening is the center front and center back are now higher and the side seams are lower. The waistline is actually going up from the side seam towards center front and center back. And then if we look at the front view, you can see we've got something going on at the front crotch shape, but also the center front is peeking up. All right. And then in the back, let's look at that as well. Now in the back, this is where you can really see the point I want to make about significantly raising the front and back rise and not adding anything to the side seams. You can see what's happening here is, for this particular example, what ended up happening was the center front and center back rise is now too long compared to your side seams. The side seams are now too short. And you can see what's happening is it's causing the fabric to grab around the sides of the full hip area, and it's also pulling through on the inseam crotch extension to the front. So the first issue of the fabric grabbing around the sides of the full hip is because it's pulling there because the side seam is too short compared to the extra length added to the center front and center back. And then all the pulling along the inseam and on the back leg is happening because there's not enough the depth in the pattern. So there's really two things going on here. If I take these two pieces and I put them side by side, I'm just going to close these so you can see. I'm just going to put these all back just here for a second. You can see that when you have this very short curved portion, especially in the back, there's really no room or not enough room for behind there. And I'd hazard a guess that the front crotch also needs a little bit more scoop to make more room inside for a body. So those are the things that I saw on this pattern. And what I want to show you here is, so obviously the first thing I would do is extend that those crotch points out a little bit. And I'm just going to recreate in a different way here, something that will sort of go along with what we're looking at. So basically, if I just make this, just like this, I'm just going to do it again. I'm just going to recreate the shape. Okay, so let's pretend the purple line is our line in the back that we're working with. And in the front, our line does something more like this. So I'm just going to line it up with this. Okay, we're going to pretend this is the center front. All right, so that kind of reproduces what the shape of the pattern that we're working with. The first thing I would do here is I'd give myself more space. Now, I just want to back up and say that everything I'm showing you here can be avoided if you start with working with a pattern that has extra fitting allowances on the inseam, side seams, and above the waist. You'd be able to balance all of this without doing any of this. So I just want to preface that when I do pants fitting, I add allowances around the edges and I adjust the rise, letting it down along the waist and also letting the crotch points out until I get a nice shape. Okay, so that's how I would start fitting. But if you're in the middle of it, or you don't want to do fitting that way and you just have these shapes, this is how I would fix it. So basically now I'm just going to take my green marker here and I'm going to just draw a slash line like this. And I'm going to draw a slash line like this. Okay. And I'm going to cut through this, and I'm just going to make a pivot here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this out a little bit so I have more of a crotch shape. And actually I can use this extra little piece of paper here to fill that in. Let me just put the paper in there like this. All right, so this will allow me to, you know, redraw this. So basically I would just true this up like this. All right, because you can see I'm adding all of this in there, which will give me more room for, you know, to fit the behind. Okay, and then let me just tape that down. All right, so that's how I would fix the depth problem in the back. And then in the front, I would do the same thing. I would just create a pivot here and cut through. You know, and doing this within the pattern like this creates a situation where you don't have to redraw your inseam. That's why I like to do this slash and spread method a little bit. So I'm going to do this one as well, but notice in the front I'm not spreading as much. Okay, you want to think of the front as a mini version of the back to fit your shape. So basically now I'm just going to take this paper off. I'm going to stick it under here. And again, you can see we have now I can just, I can true that up and make a little bit more room there, right? And then I'm adding all of this. All right, so that's one thing I would do. And anytime you adjust a crotch, you really want to put your pieces together and make sure you have a nice transition. So I'm just going to then put this like this. Oh, let me just cut this off because this is starting to look really messy. I'm just going to, let me just cut these off just so we have a nicer looking pattern here. Okay. All right, and then if I put this up against here, you can see we have a nice transition through the intersection of the inseam. So I like that. Now let's deal with the fact that we need to add a significant amount to our center front and center back. So I've already showed you what happened and what the shapes look like when we just raised the center front and center back. But what I want to show you here is if you, let's say you need, a good, I don't know, let's make it significant, 4 inches. Let's say you need 4 inches center front and center back. That's a lot, okay? And you saw what happened when you just raised that. It created an imbalance between the side seams and the center front and center back. So what I would say is go ahead and draw your slash line like this, and I'll do this one in green. Okay, so instead of creating a pivot here like I showed you earlier by doing this, right, and opening it up that 4 inches, okay, that's 4 inches, 1, 2, 3, 4. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break the pivot, and I'm just going to add, a little bit. I'm going to add 2 inches to the side seam and the 4 inches to the center back, and I want to show you what a significant difference that's going to be in terms of creating a pattern that will fit. So I'm going to use this back of the pattern I started with here, and I'm just going to tape it here. Okay, and I'm just going to measure up 4 inches over here. And mind you, I'm working with a little tiny half scale pattern, so I'm using the significant amount just to show you. Then I'm going to do 2 inches over here. Okay, so when I go to put this back, notice what happens. Oh, and you know what else I should do? Let me just extend this up all the way so I have a guide. All right, so what happens now is when I put this back on, you can see that, it's still a funky shape. And actually, I'm just going to line it up so I'm going to put it back so that I can create pretty nice shape here. I'm going to put my ruler here so I can touch. I'm just going to do that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put a piece of tape right here. Okay, and then I'm going to just redraw my back crotch like that. And then I can also, oh, wait a minute. I did that, I added way too much at the center, at the side seam. Hold on. Okay, so I want it to be like this. Sorry. So something like that. So I'm at 2 inches here. I'm at 4 inches here. I still get a little bit of a shape over here. Like you can see, it still needs to be trued up over here. It dips in, but you can see it's not as drastic. And then also I can just fill this in like this. And since I screwed up my green, I'm going to go and make this a purple line. Hold on. All right, so see, now you've got this shape, right? We've cut off about 1 inch here. So I'm going to want to add 1 inch here, right? So when I put paper back over here, like this, I'm literally going to start up here, and I'm going to start adding this wedge that I now cut off. I'm going to add that over here until I get to about 1 inch, like this, right? And then I can go ahead under the adjustment and connect that all back together. And I think what I need to do is actually tape this down, right? So this will fill in, and also, oops. So I'm going to come up here, and we're just going to create a situation where, you know, we can add it back in. And I might need to add a little bit here, but we can create a situation where we have a better shape. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go use my rotary cutter to kind of even that out, okay, to make it. All right, so I only added a 1/2 inch here because I couldn't get a great shape. But if you then add a fitting allowance to this, you can fine tune the fit of the rest of that. So I couldn't completely put back everything I took out here. I added some back. Okay, but you can see this is a much better shape, and there's more room for a body. Okay, and then once you have it on, and let me just cut this off so there's the end of the pattern. Okay, so you can see we've created a nice shape and we've tipped that back. But the other thing I want to say here is, look how far we have move that grain line. The grain line is now in the center back. So that's another thing that happens when you tip something back so far. So in the end, I might want to put some of that back. Like adding all of this length made the whole pattern do this, right? And so we've kind of fixed it over here. It's not as dramatic here, and I can adjust how much length there actually needs to be up at the waistline now, because I've added a significant amount across the entire pattern within the pattern before I cut out a muslin. Okay, and so this is why I don't like to do it this way when I'm fitting myself or when I'm teaching fitting, because we're doing all of this and then we're going to try it on the body, and if it's not correct, we're going to have to adjust it anyway. So what I think would be really helpful is if you then added fitting allowances to the sides and inseam, so you can let those out or take those in as needed. And if you had added to the top, like I talked about in the beginning, all of this that we just dealt with, we could deal with up here and then trim off the rest. So that's, I just wanted to, share that little part of this whole equation with you. But you can see that my grain line is now tipped really far. So what I think I'd want to do is just going to put a piece of paper right here, like this. And I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to put back, and I don't know how much I'd have to put back here, but I can put back some like this, and that's going to get the grain line, it gets the grain line out of the center back seam. This is dramatic. This example is dramatic, so it's likely that it hadn't been that far over here to begin with, but whatever I plus here, I'm going to minus over here. And what that does for me is it creates a pattern that's not thrown off grain. Okay, so that's how I would have dealt with this. Like I literally would have cut this off, right? And then I would have added this back in at the very end. So I'm putting back some of the things that I changed when I was adjusting the rise. So just to circle around and be real clear here, we did 3 things in this tutorial. We made more depth by slashing and spreading the crotch point. That's going to make more front to back room, and I think that will help some of the wrinkles under the behind and in the front to allow the body to sit in the base of this crotch. Then we slashed and raised the rise at center back, but we also added half the amount to the side seam. We did that so we can sort of balance the side seam to the center back and not make the center back so long that it's pulling at the side seams. All right. And then I put back the thing I didn't want to change after I added the rise. I added some back here and I trimmed some off over here. So those are the 3 things I did to fine tune this pattern. I would do the same thing in the front. Okay, so we slashed and added rise to center back, half the amount to the side seam for now. We don't know exactly what the final answer will be, but at least now we'll know that our side seam isn't going to be too short compared to our center back, and also in the front. Then I put back the angle of the center back seam and the center front seam after I tipped them, right? And finally, I made more depth by slashing and spreading the base of the crotch in the front and the back. So that's how I would have adjusted for this pattern. I think this would give a good start. But again, I would add fitting allowances to the side seams, to the inseam. So if you need to let it out some more, you can. So I just want to encourage people to try to do that because it really saves a lot of time and energy. It also saves a lot of fabric. I'm going to put a link to my troubleshooting series. It's a 4-part series that shows you how to pick a size, trace it, prep it, cut and sew a single leg muslin. I'm going to put the first part in the description below. There are links to the other parts in the description of that video. I hope you enjoyed this Fit Tip Tuesday. I love it when, I have a real example of something that I can show. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to watch. If you're enjoying my content, consider liking and subscribing to my channel. And I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.